So I get asked this question often, and I typically don't give much effort responding just because it would take a long time for me to answer the question. People ask me why I became a Ford technician. I've always loved Fords. I've always loved Chevys. I've always loved American cars better than anything else. And ever since I was a kid, I always loved diesel trucks. Any kind of semi, any kind of big truck. It was always something that made me ooh and ah as a child over it. I remember my uncle when I was 4 and 5 years old pulling up out front of the house, and he would be in a stub nose lime green Peterbilt, and he would scoop me up on the weekends, and he'd take me around the country in his truck, and we'd be gone for an hour or two and come back, and he'd drop me back off and play with me for the rest of the day. And I would always see him wrenching on stuff. I would always see him fixing on all kinds of cars. And I seen pictures of me and my grandpa. My grandpa would go from vehicle to vehicle to vehicle, and I was always with him somewhere, sitting on the hood, in the stroller, in the car seat, or something like that nearby. So from a child, I was always exposed to vehicles and mechanical stuff. It was something that I was always around. I was never really around anything else. Some woodworking and stuff like that, but mainly it was all mechanical stuff. The men in my family were typically some kind of builder, or they worked with their hands doing some kind of trade. So early on as a teenager, I wanted to try different things. I started blowing cellulose insulation. I started doing siding. I started pouring foundations and stuff. I did concrete work, and that stuff was all fun. I learned a lot, but it just didn't seem like it was really my thing. I was always okay at it, but I was never good at it. 16 years old, well, right before I turned 16 years old, I bought my first car for $300 from a man that was down the street. It didn't even run. Literally, we pushed it out of the garage, rolled it down the hill to my house, and all it had was brakes, and they barely worked. It was a 1986 Pontiac Firebird, 305 cubic inch, automatic, and I learned to rip it apart and put it back together. I fixed everything that was wrong with that vehicle. And over time, I realized that I had this passion, this love for automotive stuff. It was always something that I really took kindly to. So after the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life other than I wanted to wrench on stuff. That's what I wanted to do. So I went to college in Pocahontas, Arkansas, to Black River Technical College. I went through an automotive program. But over the few years of me trying to go to school and stuff after getting out of the military, I had gained a certification in auto body. It was 15 months of nothing but painting and repairing and splicing in frames and bodies. And I remember some of the specific projects. One of my final projects to pass the class was we ended up getting a 2002 F-250, and it was completely sideswiped. The man bought it at auction, and it had very, very low miles on it. And we literally took the entire passenger side of the vehicle apart, the bed side, the driver door, the passenger door, the front fender, the rear end out of it. And we went through this thing from front to back, me and two other guys, and that was part of our final project. We literally restored this truck from auction garbage to completely immaculate. Sherman-Williams black paint, just a gorgeous truck from front to finish, from front to back, everything repaired. And I realized that I really loved working on Ford vehicles. It was something that I loved more than anything. It seemed like the Ford vehicles spoke the most to me out of all the other manufacturers. The Ford vehicles were the ones that I enjoyed the most to work on. So I was talking to my father, and my father said, I'm the financial director at a college up here in Illinois. If you want to move back home around the family and stuff, I can get you in the program. You still have your GI Bill. You could come here and you could go through the complete program here. They have an automotive course, a diesel course. And in the meantime, I was working as a diesel mechanic at a co-op. I was restoring old classic cars and stuff. There was a number of jobs that I was doing. I was also driving a truck which would deliver fertilizer to the farmers and stuff in Arkansas, a lot of rice fields and stuff of this nature. So I got accustomed to being around farm life, being around diesels, mechanicking. Even in the military and stuff like that, in my downtime, I would buy vehicles and I would fix them up and I would sell them. It was something that I always enjoyed. And I did this from the time I was 16 years old on and off, even while doing construction, still working on vehicles and making money that way. While I was in the military, working on other soldiers' vehicles and stuff like that, but I found myself always gravitating back towards Ford vehicles. So my dad said, we have an automotive program here, we have a diesel program here, and then we have manufacturer-specific training here at the facility as well. He said we have an international program so you can work on semis, and we also have a Ford FACT program. It's an accelerated training course that you leave with the majority of their certifications, and you're in class every single day working on nothing but Ford stuff, learning diagnostics. And I asked about Chevy, and he said, no, we don't have a Chevy program, but they do have a Toyota and a Mercedes. There's a Ferrari program and all this other stuff. And I was like, you know, I really think the best thing for me is to get into the Ford program. So I moved back to Illinois. I went through the automotive course. I went through the diesel course. I went down the street to the manufacturer-specific absolute training program for international. I absolutely loved that. And then I went to the Ford program, which was the Ford Accelerated Credential Training Program, the FACT program. And through all these years of going to school on and off, I had gained so many certifications. I was very, very marketable. I started getting job offers and stuff all over the place. People were seeing this young guy that was fresh, that they can really mold and train the way that they wanted to. So I chose to go with International. I worked for International for a few years on their over-the-road rigs. I was mainly a transmission, clutch, suspension guy. The older guys did most of the engine overhauls and in-chassis overhauls and stuff like that. I was the young guy in the shop, and the bigger guy in the shop, so I was typically the guy that was pulling automatic transmissions, pulling these big, huge clutches, knocking out kingpins, rebuilding suspensions. And even in my YouTube channel, some of my earlier videos, you can see where I'm pulling drag links and stuff out of big trucks and you know, torque rods and things of this nature. And I'm going through, and it was when I first started making videos and I started doubting myself on whether or not I was good enough to even make videos. But through practicing and being on social media, I got better and better. And then eventually I left International in Ottawa, Illinois, and I went to the International dealer outside of Chicago. I worked for the largest trucking company in the entire world, or dealership in the entire world, Rush Enterprises. And they were buying up so many dealers and shutting down so many dealers, I felt like at my facility it was declining in service when I was in Ottawa, so I left. I went to a union job right outside of Chicago eventually. But in the meantime, looking for jobs, I worked for dirt excavating companies, working on Mack trucks, on their conveyor equipment and stuff like that. I worked many, many heavy-duty jobs, and it just never fit where I was at because it seemed like a lot of these people really did not care about the employee. Well, then finally I'm working, you know, when I eventually end up at Rush Enterprises and I'm working at this job, union job, I get a call. And the owner of my establishment that I work for now says, hey man, I hear you're really good. I heard from another dealer that you worked for in the past that you're not the same as other people. You will do whatever you're told, and you strive to learn, and you don't talk back or anything like that. And I really love to have a go-getter like you on my team. So I says, okay, I mean, I'd love that. You know, what are we offering? He said, you know what, whatever it is, I'm going to offer better than what you're getting now. I can guarantee that. So I go sit down with my service manager, and he's just awesome. Awesome dude. Hired me on the spot. The owner was already ready to hire me, but he said, I want to make sure you get along with your service manager before I make that commitment to hire you. And he hired me. And I've been with Ford ever since. Ford has done nothing but send me back to school, 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 and just keep me certified in all these areas, keep me going back to class and stuff because I had that go-getter type mentality. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to get better. I always wanted to achieve these other things. And while going to all these manufacturer classes at these different regional training facilities and stuff like that, you get to meet technicians from Chevy and Toyota and all these other places that use the facility to train their guys as well. And at the end of the day, when it all came down to it, everybody was always talking about the same stuff. The Chevy guys were always talking about oil consumption. They were always talking about timing chain rattling and phasers and stuff like that, and the different timing codes that mean time. I remember somebody specifically called me up and said, "Hey, while you're at the training facility, I'm working on an Acadia right now, or something to this extent, and these are the codes I have." And we're all outside on our break. We have a 15-minute break after the first like 3 hours of class. We're all standing outside, and there was a lady technician out there. She was a master tech, and I had said something in front of her and one of the instructors about these codes, and she said, "It's timing chains. I can tell you right now. You're going to have to go through, the whole motor's going to be..." I said, "Well, this vehicle's only got 40,000 miles on it." She said, "This is what it is. I'm telling you, we see this all the time. You're going to have to do a full timing chain job on that and everything else." And then, I kind of realized that a lot of the bad mouthing of manufacturers and stuff in the industry, it's all biased type stuff. They're all dealing with this type of stuff. Maybe some are better in some areas and worse in others, but they're all dealing with this type of stuff. So I learned to hunker down, deal with the problems and stuff, be open and honest about things, and just continue to try to get smarter and do better and help the customer. But through all of what Ford has done for me, that's the reason why I became a Ford technician and continue to stay with the program, because there's a lot of training, there's a lot of knowledge to be had, there's a lot of stuff to learn with all the new vehicles coming out, the new computer networks. It's constant learning, training all the time. And that's why I became a Ford technician. It's because the job was available, the training was there, people were willing to put me through the training, people were willing to have my back and stuff to keep me employed and in the business. And then the owner of the establishment that I work for now, he's always had my back. So that's why I went with Ford, and that's how I became a Ford technician. It's just loyalty, school, always employed, always have a job. And I'm not going to say that's not the case for other people, but that's my reasons why. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.